This is what happens when you have judges that don't know what they're doing. A Chancery Court Judge I'Ashea Myles got caught with her robe down, if you will, in as much as she demanded that all parties involved in this decision-making with regard to what will or will not be released in terms of the Covenant School Manifesto come to her courtroom to show cause as to why that they are not held in contempt of court. The show cause hearing scheduled yesterday by Tennessee Chancery Court Judge I'Ashea Myles concluded after the judge referenced her prior order in which she explained the possibility of appointing an outside attorney to investigate and possibly prosecute criminal contempt charges against several parties in the case, but then did nothing with it. In other words, here's my analysis of what happened. And we talked a little about this yesterday with Michael Patrick Leahy right after he left the courtroom. We had him on our airwaves first on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So Leahy, who is the editor-in-chief of the Tennessee Star, sued the Metro Nashville Police Department and other organizations based on their refusal to release what I believe to be public information with regard to the quote-unquote manifesto. Now, a side note, it is an unfortunate set of circumstances that led us to believe that there is a quote-unquote manifesto with regard to this person's writings. Apparently, this person wrote for a long period of time in what would more classically be described as journals or even diaries. They are crazy. Everything that I've seen about them indicates that there is a level of insanity there that is above and beyond even mental instability that can be treated outpatient. That is obvious considering that we know the aftermath, and everything that I say is in hindsight to what evil acts were committed in March of 2023 at the Covenant School. That said, there is no quote-unquote manifesto that she wanted released to the world. When we think of this word, it gives us a gravity and a weight that I don't think it deserves. We think of Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and his grand manifesto against the corporatization of the planet and these types of things. That's not what is there. These are the ramblings of an insane person, the ramblings of a person that had been convinced over time that there were solutions to her problems that did not exist. And many people, it seems, had convinced her that one of the solutions to her problem was that she needed to be a boy and not a girl. And sadly, that goes to the heart of why so many of us are curious about what happened to be in these writings. Not because we're going to glean any sense from where she was from a mental state. At least for me, she's crazy. I say all the time on this show that we strive often in our society to make sense of the senseless. And sometimes it's just a fool's errand. You cannot make sense of someone that is willing to shoot a 9-year-old child. You can't make sense of that. You call it what it is, and that is evil. And you try to identify it before these acts happen. But to try to understand why someone would do that is an exercise in futility. I mean, you're never going to do it because there is evil involved in the manifestation of those actions. And I don't know that we would want to do it. But that said, what you can glean is how perhaps this insane person put the pieces together and was led down a path. And were there things that we should have known? Were there flags that should have been raised? Were there moments in time? Did the psychiatric community let us down? I think from the information that we've seen so far, the answer is an emphatic yes. Because they let her down in having her believe that some sort of transition from being a boy to a girl is going to be the solution to all of her problems. And that all of this pain and all of this anger and all of this rage and all of this mental illness is somehow going to melt away. That leads us to a broader conversation about what our psychiatric community is doing to our young people when they insist to our young people that somehow this is the answer to all of your issues. Whatever hormones are going through your body, whatever issues you're having when you're 12 or 13 years old, that they're going to magically melt away because you're a boy born in a girl's body or a girl. I mean, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. Those of us who legitimately want to glean that information, want to see the information, not because we're rubbernecking, not because we want to look at the accident on the side of the road. And I understand that those people exist too, but because there might be valuable information. Secondarily, that is actually secondary to the broader point that you do not want to live in a country where a government decides for you what you get to see and what you don't get to see. Because I promise you, they're going to err on the side of you don't get to see. And that's going to become more and more and more prevalent the more and more power you give said government. In other words, we believe in openness. There should be a high bar and a high standard for a government to tell you that you don't get to see something. Is it going to endanger individuals in the United States of America? I mean, is it going to put people in real and present danger to present this information? Is it going to expose, for example, our military personnel if we talk about certain methods that the United States government engages in when dealing with foreign entities? That's a good example, right? I mean, most of us can wrap our head around why we don't need to know everything that the military is doing at any given moment with regard to technology and the advances that they've made in said technology, because we don't want our enemies to find out what we know and what we don't know. It makes sense. I get it. I understand that. But there should be a high bar and a high standard always when we're talking about those things. And in this case, it simply doesn't meet the standard. I understand. And I have I've not spoken with any of the family members that were directly affected by the Covenant school, but I have talked to Covenant parents who were indirectly affected, who had kids not in those individual classrooms that were most dramatically affected on that day, but kids that were in the school itself. And it is, I mean, as you can imagine, it's incredibly emotional for them. It's incredibly emotional to talk about having to, and they describe it as reliving the experience. Well, and I understand and I'm sensitive to that. But the emotional touchstone that this is in our community does not negate the responsibility of the government to make the public aware of their investigation, fully aware of their investigation, and fully aware of these materials. All right. That said, that's my treatment on all of this. So I think the idea that we're having a hearing about what we should or should not be able to see, if you need to redact information that's going to potentially endanger individuals or expose individuals that are private citizens that you don't need to expose, redact those materials, release the rest of it, and let's move on from this. Do I believe that we're going to find anything additional in this information that is of value? I hesitate to say that, because from everything that I've read and from everything that I've seen and from everyone that I've talked to, this is a person that should have long been flagged by the psychiatric community to be involuntarily committed for mental illness. And she wasn't. And because of that, she slowly but surely developed this action plan by which she engaged in evil. The ultimate evil is the taking of a life, and even more so the taking of the life of a child. Now, all of that to say, it is ridiculous that a judge would consider putting a media outlet in jail for doing their job, which is what the Tennessee Star was doing. It is equally ridiculous, or even more so ridiculous, that you don't see more media outlets, and I said this yesterday, coming to the defense of Michael Patrick Leahy. Regardless of where his political beliefs are, regardless of his conservative bent, every media outlet in this community and across this country should be defending his right to petition the government for a redress of his grievances, as stated in the First Amendment of the Constitution, and his ability, as also stated in the First Amendment, to openly present information valuable to the public without fear of reprisal from the government. I mean, you don't want a government that is powerful enough to put press people in jail because press people presented information that the government finds to be inconvenient, which is what seemingly happened in this case, or what was threatened in this case. So, to put it down there where the goats can graze on it. So, the judge was informed by another media, a television station, WSMV. Let's just go ahead and throw it out there. Some reporter from WSMV contacts the judge, I'Ashea Myles, and says, hey, you told these people not to publish this material, and they're publishing this material. What are you going to do about it? Why aren't you throwing them in jail? I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically the nature of the call. And the judge says, what are you talking about? Well, they're publishing this material, Judge. And the judge says, well, I can't have that. Let's call a hearing. You're going to have to show cause as to why I don't throw you in jail, Michael Patrick Leahy. And when you get to court, actually, before they got to court, someone got to I'Ashea Myles and said, Judge, I think you didn't look before you leapt in this case. You got a little ahead of yourself. There's a lot of different cliches that you put the cart before the horse, et cetera, et cetera. Bottom line is this. Myles got told nobody did anything to violate the law. Does Michael Patrick Leahy have this material? Yes, he does. Has he published it? No. Because he's in the middle of a lawsuit and he understands the law. Now, has he published his reflection upon reading the material? Yes. Is that against the law? Of course it isn't. I mean, now we're going to jail people for reflecting on materials that they have seen. So you're not even publishing the quote unquote manifesto anymore. I'm talking about my thought process when I read it, my reaction to reading it. Now that's a jailable offense? Of course it isn't. Not in America, nor should it be. So I think someone got to the judge, which made the hearing yesterday even more so awkward, because the judge, a show cause hearing is designed to, if you describe to the complainants in a case or the plaintiffs in a case, hey, this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. And if you start doing what you can't do, I'm gonna hold you in contempt. Well, a show cause hearing is like, you need to explain to me why I don't throw you in jail for violating my court order. That's what it's for. And instead, the judge said, oh, no, I just called everybody here to explain themselves. To which Michael Patrick Leahy in the Tennessee Star said, explain what? Can you tell us why we're here? Well, I'm trying to figure out if you violated any of my order. What order would that be, Your Honor? Because we clearly have not violated any of that. Myles issued the order Myles on June 10th demanded that Leahy appear in the court. Both Leahy and his company, because he's CEO of Star News Digital Media, are plaintiffs in this lawsuit. Brian Wilson has done great reporting in the afternoons on Supertalk 99.7 WTN. And frankly, I think, Brian is well aware of the law as well. And I would suggest that because he's not a plaintiff in the case is the reason that he probably wasn't brought to the court as well, considering some of the information that he's provided and some of the audio that he's provided, including interviews with the parents and whatnot. All of which I believe is perfectly above board in terms of presenting to the public. Not presenting any real and present danger. You can consume it if you want to. You can listen to it if you want to. You don't have to listen to it if you don't want to, if it's emotional for you or whatnot. But it is valuable information and piecing. What we're dealing with is a huge, huge jigsaw puzzle. And we have huge sections of the jigsaw puzzle missing. We're trying to put those pieces of the puzzle together to, as best we possibly can, understand what led up to the circumstances in March of 2023 and what possibly could have been done, if anything, to prevent it. So Myles in this case is now using the publication of not the materials themselves, but commentary on seeing the materials and what it might mean for the overall case. She's using that as an excuse not to issue her ruling on whether or not to issue. Here's the thing. Myles knows the law. I mean, you can say that she doesn't understand or whatever. She knows what she needs to do. She just doesn't want to do it. I understand the emotional appeal of the parents in the case. I understand where the Covenant School stands on it. I understand all of those things. We also understand the law. And the law compels the judge to release the material. And the judge doesn't want to do that because the judge doesn't want to take the backlash that she thinks will come with the release of the material. And so she's trying to find any excuse under the sun not to do it. Do it. Do it for the sake of the law. Do it for the sake of the community, and we move on from it. And then you put this, and we begin to put the pieces together to learn what we can and potentially prevent these types of things without violating the rights of any other people. That's the bottom line. And that's what I have to say about that.